Hi folks, Mark here again, and for this week's lesson we're going to focus in on the role our hips play in not only creating power, but stability in our golf swing, now that we have improved our pre-shot setup fundamentals from last week. So without further delay, go ahead and grab a club, and let's get to work. Breaking down the common swing flaws that affect many of us that play this game and then their associated fixes, the common denominator is the role the body plays. So a couple things we need to keep in mind as we begin to look at our full swing in motion, and they're based on some of the changes that we made to our pre-shot setup fundamentals from last time. The first is that we are playing this game in a tilted position. We're hitting something on the ground, so we need to be able to create the proper posture that's going to allow us to reach the golf ball consistently on the ground. The second is that much like many of the other sports we play, if it's hitting a tennis ball, baseball, or throwing, it is a rotational-based, rotational-driven motion, okay? My body rotates to create power on the backswing, potential energy, and then through rotation, I'm going to be able to deliver that energy to the thing I'm hitting and then send that down range. And then thirdly, there is an arm component based on that neutral and natural grip that we talked about, where I connect the club head to my hands, and now while I'm rotating, I'm able to deliver that club face to the golf ball squarely. Now sometimes we may want to have the face open on purpose or shut on purpose to make the ball go different ways, but again, ideally we're looking at being tilted over, creating rotation, and then we have the arm component where my arms go from one side of my body to the other side of my body during that motion. So based on those three main ideas, most of our breakdowns in our golf swing, the common flaws in our golf swing, occur when our body moves either out of balance based on my setup positions or out of sequence when it comes to the rotation and application of my arms. So the first thing we're going to look at is our setup and understanding, one, from face on, we need to limit how much our body moves side to side. We need to stay within the balance of my feet. We can't let our center of balance get outside of the edges of my base, okay? From down the line, again being tilted over, once I go into rotation, I need to make sure that rotation doesn't cause me to lift up either during my backswing or my downswing. And again, we don't want to sway to the side during that motion. So to me, the hips is the critical part of my body. It's going to help link all of this together. And the way that we're going to explain it, quick little physics lesson here, put a golf ball in a sock and start to rotate it around your hand. And a couple things we're going to feel here. The first is, this is a rotational motion. It's not a linear motion. Side to side, up or down. It doesn't work that way. We got to create rotation. The rotation comes from the center and is created by you rotating your hand at your wrist. So that wrist joint, very similar to our hips to a certain extent. It's a rotating body part. As we speed it up, you see the golf ball start to pull away. The internal rotation is centripetal force. The result is the pulling away force. As the ball accelerates, it pulls away from the center. That's centrifugal force. Acceleration here creates acceleration out here, and acceleration and speed is the key to distance. As we're doing this too, something that we're going to notice, because I don't think any of you are going to have an issue with this. Now, as this ball is going around, the force is pulling away. And what happens in order to maintain that relationship is your hand at any given time is actually going in the opposite direction. So if the ball was coming over and starting to go towards the wall, my hand starts to pull down and the ball goes down. Then my hand starts to pull up and the ball goes up, and then my hand starts to pull down. If I was doing this and all of a sudden my hand follows, as the ball goes across, my hand follows it, the ball all of a sudden wins and pulls me out of balance. So if I freely give up this motion, then the momentum's going to win. I have to oppose it. So at any given point, my hand is going in the opposite direction. So the same thing happens with our golf swing. When we start to move the club, As it starts to go this direction, I have to use my hips, like my hands, to create an opposing force. As the club starts to go away from the target, that direction, my right hip is going to start to turn or rotate around and towards the target. So it actually is going in the opposite direction, okay? So we're opposing the force. So I want you just to key in on backswing motion is going to be more about my trail hip, or as a right-hander, my right hip. When the club moves this way, my hip goes this way. As the club starts to work its way up, in order to stop that, we are now at the start of our downswing. I am now going to take my downswing, and the rest of my through swing is going to be driven by my lead hip. In order to get my club to stop going this way, I need to start my left hip. And as my left hip rotates, it's now going to be going in the opposite direction of my club head to offset it. I need to keep rotating. So again, I'm not going to go to the side. If we're looking at down the line, as the club starts to go up, I don't want to go with it. I need to oppose it. So as the club starts to go up, you'll actually start to lean forward towards the golf ball. Even though the club's not moving very fast, it's still imparting force on us. So as you lean down, you're going to oppose that force. Again, it's going to keep us balanced, keep everything even. As I change directions then, as my body continues to move down, that's going to help make the club start to fall. Now I have to start to rotate, because if I just keep going in this direction, the club's going to hit the ground. So when I first start rotating, it's rotating towards the ground before it goes forward and then up. So this rotation is always in the opposite direction, just like my hand. So to help illustrate that a little bit better, give you some context then, we're going to have you, in this case I have a piece of plywood up against a chair. This represents a wall, it could be the back of a couch, or even your kitchen counter. Something for you to be able to get that good posture position, and then I want you to back up to it. With your hand between your pocket and the wall, I want to create a little buffer space, okay? Now for us, if you are somebody that has a tendency to sway to the right, you'll never hit the wall. If you're somebody that has a tendency to stand up, your hips will actually move away from the wall. So our goal in our backswing with that trail hip is to rotate it against the wall. Now it's not just going back, it is rotating. So once it hits the wall, if I continue to rotate, I'm actually going to move along the wall towards the target. Downswing and follow through is now the lead hip. So as you change directions, it's not pulling away from the wall. It is actually making your lead hip move back or rotate against it. There's going to be a moment where I want both pockets, both cheeks to be against the wall before you transition into just the left and finally rotate through, and only at the very end of your swing, as your body finally finishes its swing, will we be in a straight up position and maybe away from the wall. There are some players who will actually see through their finish, they're still leaned over and their hip would still be against the wall, okay? But the idea here is at any given moment, your hips are moving in the opposite direction of the club to give you that opposing force. Giving our hip action the right motion at the right time, we're going to avoid sliding to the right, standing up. On the downswing, we're going to avoid pushing forward, and we're going to use rotation of our hips to keep us against the wall, which is going to keep us in our posture. If we can keep ourselves balanced and opposing the forces, then we have a much more predictable path that the club's going to travel. If we're out of balance, we have a tendency to use our extremities to try to regain our balance, and in the case of the golf swing, our extremities are tied to the club head, and if I start to get out of balance, my hands, generally speaking, kick in and try to save the day. I'm going to miss hit it. So to me today, hips are the key against the wall. That's our drill. With our hip action improved, it is going to make some changes to our footwork, and we're going to pick that up next time. So work hard with this idea, master this, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next thing. So again, work hard, have fun, stay warm, and I look forward to seeing you next time.